You might be wondering why the biggest news story of the weekend produced two completely different realities depending on whose feed you happen to be reading. We have this summit where JD Vance flew to Switzerland to sit across from the Iranians, and if you read one side of the internet, Iran walked out. Vance was left sitting there looking like a guy who got stood up at prom. The Pakistani Prime Minister looked absolutely terrified, and the whole thing was a massive historic humiliation for the United States. But if you read the other side, both sides magically agreed on a roadmap to peace. Iran is letting nuclear inspectors back into the country, and everyone high-fived and went home. So which one is true? Well, they both are. And the reason that is even possible is what I actually want to talk about today, because it perfectly illustrates the incredibly weird way the Iranian regime operates, and honestly, how modern diplomacy is mostly just theater for social media. So, let me walk you through what actually went down at this luxury resort up in the Swiss Alps, which, yes, is exactly the kind of dramatic James Bond villain backdrop you would pick if you were staging a global summit specifically for the cameras. This wasn't just a quiet one-on-one chat. It was a four-party situation with the US, Iran, Pakistan, and Qatar. You had Vance leading the American side alongside Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner. Iran sent their parliament speaker Mohammad Ghalibaf as the chief negotiator, with the foreign minister Abbas Araghchi tagging along. Pakistan brought their prime minister Shehbaz Sharif and their army chief Field Marshal Asim Munir, who Vance publicly joked was one of the two most important people in his life next to his wife. That got a laugh from the room, but left the Pakistani Prime Minister looking like he was desperately trying to figure out if he was supposed to smile. So they are there to build on a 14-point memorandum of understanding that was signed just 4 days earlier on June 17th. So they show up, they start talking, and within the first 80 minutes, Donald Trump posts on social media that if Iran doesn't rein in Hezbollah in Lebanon, the United States is going to hit Iran again and harder than last time. So immediately the Iranian delegation announces they are suspending the talks because of this quote-unquote threatening statement from the Americans. Iranian state media instantly broadcasts that their guys have left the building in protest. And this is where we get to the humiliation narrative, which is the exact moment the viral story completely divorces itself from reality. See, the Iranians did not actually leave the building. A senior U.S. diplomat confirmed on the record that the Iranian delegation was still right there at the venue, and the talks kept going. In fact, they stayed and worked through the entire night for 18 hours straight. And at the end of those 18 hours, Qatar and Pakistan put out a joint statement saying that everybody made encouraging progress in a positive and constructive atmosphere, and that they all agreed on a roadmap toward a final deal within 60 days. So what you actually had was 80 minutes of pure, calculated theatrical performance, followed by 18 hours of actual, boring, grind-it-out negotiation. But the performance was the part that got filmed. The performance was the part that got chopped up into viral clips about the United States getting embarrassed on the world stage. Because it is an incredibly old trick. And not even a complicated one. You saw it with the famous snub where Iran's foreign minister walked into the room while the cameras were rolling, hugged the Pakistani prime minister, shook his hand, and completely ignored JD Vance, who was standing right across the room. The planned group photo never happened. The planned handshake never happened. Vance later brushed it off as just a little bit of threatening and a little bit of whining before the real talks continued. But progressives and commentators jumped all over this, saying that the U.S. had never looked smaller or weaker. And yeah, they are not wrong that it was deeply outward. It was a deliberate, staged signal. The Iranians are masters of the deliberate, staged signal. But here's the thing that you have to understand about the Iranian regime. They desperately needed that footage. They needed to go back to their domestic audience and show them that they did not bow down, that they did not shake the American vice president's hand, and that the Islamic Republic stood tall. Why? Because secretly, behind closed doors, they were agreeing to invite international nuclear inspectors back into the country for the first time in years. That snub wasn't a humiliation for the United States. That snub was the literal political currency Iran had to spend with its own hardliners to be able to make the deal they just made. The insult and the agreement are not a contradiction. They are the exact same transaction, just for different audiences. So if you look past this knob, you see that they actually hammered out in those 18 hours. You have a roadmap to a final deal within 60 days, with a technical working group staying behind to iron out the details. You have a Lebanon deconfliction cell, which is a specific mechanism to try and stop the fighting between Israel and Hezbollah, which Iran insisted had to be dealt with first. You have the IAEA inspectors being invited back in, which Vance called the biggest headline of the summit, even though we still have to wait and see if Iran actually lets them through the door. And then there is this fascinating proposal Jared Kushner worked out with Qatari officials. The idea is that any future unfrozen Iranian money wouldn't just be handed over to Tehran. It would be heavily controlled and forced to be spent on American agricultural products for the Iranian people. We're talking about soy, corn, and wheat. So both the US and Qatar would have to approve the process. So Iran hasn't publicly agreed to that specific part yet, but the fact that it is on the table tells you everything you need to know about what kind of deal the Trump administration is building. The money flows, but only if it flows directly into the pockets of American farmers first. So, as we go into this week, stop looking at the theatrics and watch the technical working groups still on the ground in Switzerland. What happens in those sessions will tell you if the invitation for the nuclear inspectors is real or just more theater. So watch Lebanon to see if Iran can actually force Hezbollah into a ceasefire, or if they fall back on their favorite excuse that rogue commanders are acting independently and nobody can control them. And keep your eye on that 60-day clock that started ticking on Sunday, putting us right in mid-August. So deadlines in diplomacy don't guarantee anything, but they completely change the pressure dynamics. And that 60-day window is where the entire future of this deal lies. The real story here isn't that America got humiliated in Switzerland. The story is that the people running Iran had to put on an 80-minute play of defiance for the cameras so they could spend 18 hours quietly agreeing to things they hadn't agreed to before. So understanding why they have to operate that way will tell you infinitely more about how the regime works than any single piece of paper they could ever sign. So if you want more of my deeper analysis on geopolitics and the deeply weird behavior of the people who run the world, go check my blog, thepowerpundit.com. I can say things there that I prefer not to say anywhere else. The link is in the description. And share this video with your family and friends so they know what is actually going on. My name is Jesus Enrique Rosas. I'm the Power Pundit. Much love and bliss.